Peymon who?
Mottahedeh.
Peymon Mottahedeh. Who is he?
Never paid taxes in 30 years. Fought the U.S. tax court and won.
See, I believe our rights come from God, not from government.
Why is the federal income tax constitutional, yet you, the people of the 50 states, are not required to file and pay federal income taxes? That is the topic I'm going to cover in this presentation for you. I am Peymon Mottahedeh, the president of Freedom Law School, which I started in 1996. For over 30 years, I've not filed or paid any federal income taxes, and helping Americans like you do the same and be free. Never been to prison. None of my students been to prison when they started with me clean, following the law. This is going to be a very important presentation on the Constitution and the history of America and income tax for you to really understand what this is all about. It's going to be longer, so you have to cut up on a different drive around town, watch it in pieces as you go to and from work or during lunch or dinner time, but it'll be well worth your time if you follow and watch the whole presentation, okay? So here we go. The government says, the federal government, that the 16th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution gave the federal government the power to tax the income of the average American person, okay? And it has a very specific language in here. Why was it written this way? Why did it talk about, they can power to lay and collect tax on incomes, from whatever source derived without apportionment? What is that all about among the several states? Okay, we're going to talk about these things, okay? That's going to help you understand things a lot better, okay? But remember, look at this. This is the U.S. Supreme Court said that back in 1916, I'll get into it more specifically later on, that the 16th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution conferred no new power of taxation to Congress. What a minute. Here's the 16th Amendment that Supreme Court said did not give Congress new taxing powers at all. So how is it that the federal government, the IRS, claims that 16th Amendment is the power they get it from to tax you? Well, it's not. So here's going to get more interesting now. Hang on, because I'm going to go back to founding documents of America first. See, I'm going to show you the truth about America's heritage of freedom and our God-given rights, and how the founding fathers of America made sure that you would never become a tax slave of the U.S. government, okay? And you see, this is the Declaration of Independence of 1776, right? Well, what does it say in some of the key parts that you all know about, okay? It says that, our laws come from what? Everything's based upon laws of nature and of nature's God, okay? They believed in God. They believed in your rights come from not government, not from a constitution or a king, but from government. That's a theme of the Declaration of Independence. The foundation of it is that, okay? And they talk about it again. They say, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, which means rights that cannot be taken away and made alien to you. That among these rights are life, right to liberty and freedom, right to pursue happiness. And that to secure these God-given rights, governments are instituted among men. In America, it was certainly done that way. deriving their just powers, lawful, proper powers, from the consent of the government as the agent of the people to secure those God-given rights. See, we're not taught these things in high school much more these days, right? But that's a foundation. It will relate to the income tax if you stay with me, okay? Now, this is Articles of Confederation. You see it, and here it is. This is the document that the states operated under, okay, which was adopted in November 1777 until the Constitution was written later on, okay? It was a legal friendship of the 13 states, 13 colonies under England became 13 states or countries. And it was a legal friendship for them to work, cooperate together. The federal government at the time did not exist. It was just basically a cooperation amongst the states to unanimously agree these countries to do something. Okay? And things were not working out the way they wanted to. You know, they wanted to have a more streamlined way of cooperating together for the common needs of the countries or the states. So, for that reason, here's the U.S. Constitution, was later on proposed and adopted, okay? It superseded the Articles of Confederation, okay? And created a framework for agent governments. The federal government is the agent of the states to do certain tasks for the states. That's all it is, okay? So now, we're going to go cover taxation in more specifically, but just know the bottom line is the federal government is the agent of the states. And states work for the people. So the people created the states, and the states gave certain powers to the federal government, like taxing powers as well. So here's what it says about taxation, direct taxation, like on you, okay? It says that direct representative and direct taxes shall be apportioned, which means divided up among the several states, okay, which may be included in this union, because America has a union of 13 countries. It used to be now 50 countries, according to their respective numbers, okay? So that limitation in the Constitution is still there. That's right. Was not repealed. It is still part of the U.S. Constitution. And way back then, they did direct taxes this way. Here's the very first direct tax law in July 14th, 1798, an act to lay and collect a direct tax within the United States, a direct tax of $2 million late, okay? $2 million. And here you can see the states are listed one at a time, and the amount of tax that they must collect from their people, okay, to give to the federal government, okay? Now, so this is the way it was done. Each state would collect this particular amount. For example, let's take, for example, New Hampshire. To the state of New Hampshire, $77,705.66, and 2 meals. Meal is 1/10 of a cent. When you buy gas, you see price of something is $1.35, $9.10. That's 9/10 meals. Okay, so it was the states that collected the taxes. That was the intent of the founding fathers. That's how it was done several times back in the early days. But the international bankers created the privately owned Federal Reserve, which was going to make money out of thin air and lend out to the federal government at interest. And they wanted to make sure that the federal government can pay the interest on those loans without having to be stopped or stymied or hindered in any way by the states. They wanted them to directly tax the American people, the federal government, to pay off the international bankers that owned the privately owned Federal Reserve Bank. That's why they want to give the federal government the direct taxation power, which they did through deception, make you think they gave it that power when it did not, because they could not do it. So here's how they did it. So you see again, the text of 16th Amendment talks about that you can collect taxes now without apportionment among the several states. That's the key part of the 16th Amendment. The most important part. I'm going to focus on this part only right now, okay? And here's the Supreme Court I shared with you earlier, Stanton versus Baltic Mining Company of 1916, okay, which talks about the 16th Amendment. It mentions the previous Supreme Court just earlier that year called Bushaber versus Union Pacific Railroad, which analyzed and discussed the 16th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution and interpreted it, okay? So it says that in the Bushaber case, the language of Bushaber was so convoluted here, it was simplified and told everybody the simple constitutional fact that by the previous ruling, the Bushaber versus Union Pacific Railroad case, it was settled that the provisions of the 16th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution conferred no new power of taxation to the federal government. Yep. What it did is simply prohibited the previous complete and plenary power of taxation, income taxation, from beginning to be taken out of the category of indirect taxation to which it belonged. It's kind of said, well, cannot be direct tax, so must be indirect tax. But indirect taxes have no limitation. All they're going to be is uniform throughout the states. Tax on import, for example, is excise tax. Any import from port in Los Angeles or New York or Miami pays the exact same rate of import taxation. Okay? Tax on oil as a privilege, excise, same no matter where it is. Okay? So what the Supreme Court just said, it belongs in that category. It was not the issue. They had Bushaber ask a wrong question and get the wrong answer. Bushaber never got to the key point of the case. I think he was agent of the bankers to take this case up to the Supreme Court. So the wrong question gets asked, and you see what the right question should have been. Okay, we'll come to that in a moment. So I'm going to show you something else for us. The 13th Amendment, you see, stopped involuntary servitude, okay? And guess what? It gives specifically power to the federal government, Congress, to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. The 16th Amendment does not have any such language. Why? Because it did not give Congress any new taxing power whatsoever. Now you go on, look at also the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, right? Okay, that also in Section 5 gave Congress power to enforce this new power of federal government by appropriate legislation. Same thing, you see the pattern now with the 15th Amendment, okay? So here again, Congress was given the new power to enforce this constitutional power, okay? Here we go to 18th Amendment. Guess what? Same thing. This is about prohibiting alcohol or intoxicating liquors with that. So again, here, Congress and the several states were given the power to concurrently enforce this new power that they got. And the 19th Amendment, here it is, okay? This is what gave women the power to vote, okay? Again, Congress was given power to enforce this new constitutional provision by appropriate legislation. No such thing appears for 16th Amendment, okay? So let me show you. Again, going back to the U.S. Constitution, okay? What happened there is that the states, in 1776, they got together. There was only 2.5 million people back then. They were small countries. Each had about 200,000 citizens. And in 1789, when they created the agent headquartered in D.C., in a district of Columbia, Washington, D.C., they delegated 18 specific common functions of these countries or states to the U.S. government. These powers include common defense, common currency or money, immigration rules, commerce between states and foreign nations, and so forth. And the countries kept all the functions and powers to themselves. Again, let me remind you, America is not a or one country. We are 50 countries in a union. Florida, Texas, California, all countries, no different than Germany, France, and Italy are countries within the European Union. And they delegated certain powers to the European Union government, like they have common money and common immigration rules throughout the Union. When the Union was created, you no longer need a passport to go from France to Germany to Italy. Okay? Same thing here. Between the 50 United States, you can travel without no border or passport controls. Got it? So let's get this out of our head that we're one country. We're not. We speak the same language, same culture basically, but technically, legally, we are the United States. United countries, and the federal government is given that much power. Each country or state in America has its own lawmaking legislature, its own executive branch head, governor, it's like the president of the United States, and its own Supreme Court to adjudicate the laws, just like the federal government. That's why in every state you have driver license of that state, car registration of that state. They have those that are laws, right? They're countries. All right. Now that we got that straight, let's talk about the fact that in Section 8, Clause 1, Section 8, this is where the powers of the federal government are specifically listed, okay? There's 18 specific powers, and no more than that the federal government has, okay? And this is, you see, Washington, D.C. And they needed to make D.C. independent of the states so that it would not be put under the pressure of any one state. They thought about putting this new government in Pennsylvania or New York, the two biggest states at the time. But if they did that, the founding fathers felt that New York could put pressure on this new government to pass laws favorable to New York, and Pennsylvania could have done the same. For that reason, what they did was Maryland and Virginia gave a 10-mile square land of swamp, literally swamp land, okay? And gave it to the federal government, said, do what you want with this swamp land. Nobody cares, and you can do whatever you want in this land called the District of Columbia, because the number one power that this government was to have unified defense against England, who still was interested in getting its old colonies back to be part of England. So that was number one reason why they formed that, and they gave the federal government absolute power in his lands, in Washington, D.C., any land that the states gave the federal government for defensive purposes against England, the outsiders. Do whatever you want in those lands. This is yours. Do whatever you need to do to protect us from outsiders. Okay? That's what they did. That was the design way back then. Okay? And so that's why you see Supreme Court, in this case of Houben and Allison Company versus the VAT Tax Commission of Ohio in 1945, say that the term United States could mean three different meanings. That's right. You didn't know that. But could be three different things. It may be merely name of a sovereign occupying the position analogous to that of other sovereign a family of nations, like compared to Russia, China, England, Germany, France. Right? Or it may be the collective name of the states, which are united by and under the Constitution. But the middle one, that's the one where the federal tax laws are written for. United States may designate the territory or land over which the sovereignty of the United States extends. That means the federal government is king. They can do whatever they want. The federal government has very limited powers in the states, practically none. Okay? It's all protect us from outsiders. Okay? The states are, remember, sovereign, but in D.C., the federal government is king. So you see the term United States, usually we think of the very first United States, sometimes the third United States. but in tax law, it's a second United States. I'm going to elaborate on this topic for you momentarily, and you see why. Code of Federal Regulations. There's the Federal Tax Law Regulations written by the U.S. Treasury, talking about tax on individuals. Okay, it says who is a citizen. Every person who is born a citizen or naturalized in the United States and subject to its singular jurisdiction, not the 50 states, their jurisdiction, subject to its singular jurisdiction. That tells you they're talking about the Washington, D.C. government, the second United States. That's what the tax laws are written for. I'm going to go into that in more detail and show it to you now. Okay? So here is a part of the Constitution that gives federal government power to do what they want to do in D.C. and other federal lands. Okay? To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such districts, okay, not exceeding 10 miles square and made by secession of particular states and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of the government of the United States, and to exercise like authority, okay, for over all places purchased by the consent of legislation of the state in which the same shall be, for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, and dockyards, and other needful buildings. Clearly, it was to defend America from England and foreigners, try to take our freedoms away, make us part of England again. That's what they gave the federal government the power to do whatever it wants to do in this land, which became later on Washington, D.C. to be known. At the time of the Constitution, there was no D.C. There was no District of Columbia. They had to create one. Okay? And they landed later on have for military installation that they will create. Okay? And they gave here in Article 4, Section 3, Congress the power to dispose and make all needful rules and regulation respecting the territory or the property belonging to the United States. Oh, wow! The federal government has power to make all needful rules and regulations for any territory or property belonging to the United States. Ah, that means Washington, D.C. Now we have Puerto Rico, Guam, Virgin Islands, American Samoa, other territories, lands of the federal government. They can do like anything they want. In military installation in the 50 states, in military bases, it's not part of that state. In California has some military bases. Those military bases are not part of California. Legally, they're part of the federal government. And the federal government can do whatever they want in those lands. Okay, here's the Constitution provision that grants that. Okay, now Dallas versus Bidwell is a key case. It was a long, convoluted case in 1901 about taxation from things coming to and from Puerto Rico. Because it's such a convoluted case, I'm going to give you a summary of it by Wikipedia, which is a very quick, non-political interpretation. It's not a political case at all. It's just a very simple thing. And basically, the majority of the Supreme Court in a 5-4 decision in Dallas versus Bidwell said this: the Constitution does not necessarily apply to the territories. Instead, the U.S. Congress has jurisdiction to create laws within territories in certain circumstances, particularly those dealing with revenue or taxes, which would not be allowed by the Constitution for the U.S. states. Whoa! You see that, folks? Read the hell out of that part. The Constitution does not necessarily apply to the territories because it was not meant for D.C. D.C. was meant to be a federal government land to do whatever necessary by federal government to defend us from foreigners, make all rules and needful regulations from D.C. and federal lands and territories. So, for example, those limitations on taxation, limitation on direct taxes, which you read earlier, direct taxes must be apportioned. It does not apply to Washington, D.C., and federal territories like Puerto Rico, Guam, Virgin Islands, and so forth, and other federal territories, lands, and buildings and military installations. With that Supreme Court case now making this very clear, I believe that case was sent to the Supreme Court deliberately to set this clear precedent. Okay, now they wrote the law applying only to Washington, D.C. That's by Title 26. Internal Revenue Code. This is a federal tax laws that's published by uscode.house.gov. The Congress says lawyers publish this actually in Chapter 79 definitions. When you see a term United States, right, as used in this Title 26, right? Here it is, Title 26, the federal tax laws. The word United States and state, neither one of them includes anything beyond the District of Columbia. None of the 50 states are mentioned whatsoever. D.C. is not even a state. It's a territory of the federal government, but it's listed as a state where the 50 states are not listed in there on purpose. By the way, let me remind you, when it comes to oil taxes from Title 26, in Section 4612, okay, tax on petroleum, here they also have special definitions, and the term United States explicitly includes the 50 states and D.C. and a bunch of U.S. territories, and on top of that, continental shelf areas and foreign trade zones. Okay, so they knew what they were doing when they wrote the law this way. Even way back in 1913, as I'll show you, even back then, the law never applied to the people of the Union States. Okay, so here we go. This is the 1913, the first income tax law of 1913. Okay, and so here we are. It says right here that this tax is to be imposed on every citizen of the United States. Oh, and people thought, oh, I'm a U.S. citizen. It applies to me. No. Nobody read the definitions. Okay? So here it is, and to every person residing in the United States. This is not the 50 states. This is the D.C. and its territories of the United States. And you see here, we're going to specifically define. By the way, back then, look at this. The tax was only 1%. Okay? Okay? If someone makes over $20,000 back then and does not exceed $50,000. $20,000 back then was about 100 times more today. I mean, someone who would make over $2 million in today's money, under $5 million, and only paid 1%. They deliberately did this. The camel's nose through the noose. Later on, the whole camel will be there. The international bankers did this deliberately to slowly get the American people to become slaves of the federal government. Okay, the highest tax rate was 6%. Okay, and that 6% was that anybody make over $500,000, which would be over $50 million in today's money. And here's now the definition of that 1913 law. States and United States construed. Whoa, look at this. That the word state or United States, when used in this section, shall be construed to include any territory, Alaska, and the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and the Philippine Islands. Oh, yeah. Philippines was a U.S. territory. See, any territory. Okay? Alaska, and it was a territory. So was Hawaii, by the way, a territory of the United States. Whoa. This is very clear. That's why today's laws, income tax law, still doesn't apply to you, the people of 50 states. Over the decades, they took out all the federal territories out of them. Like when Alaska and Hawaii became states, they were taken out of the definition of the term United States and state. And all that's left now is the District of Columbia. See? Now you see why. You look at the 1048 form, it says U.S. individual income tax return. They want you to believe this means 50 states individual income tax return, when it is not. This is really a District of Columbia individual income tax return. And the IRS's instructions under 1040 form on page 8, okay, correctly says the same thing, that it applies to U.S. citizens and residents, not the people of the United States, okay? Because those are people that it's supposed to apply to. And remember, this is the most important Supreme Court case you ever read, Gould versus Gould, unanimous tax case in 1917. What does it say? It says, if you have any doubt about anything you see about taxes, note this about taxes. In the interpretation or understanding of statutes, laws, levying or imposing taxes, it is established rule not to extend the provisions of tax laws by implication or implying beyond the clear import of the language used, or to enlarge their operations so as to embrace matters not specifically pointed out. If it's not specifically pointed out, it's not part of the tax laws. And the 50 states are not in the definition of the United States in the federal tax laws for income tax and other general purposes. And in case of any doubt by you, the tax laws are construed most strongly against the government's power to tax and in favor of you, the citizen, not being taxed. There he goes. So now you see why the income tax is completely constitutional. It applies only to Washington, D.C. Social Security FICA taxes apply only to 4 U.S. island territories of Puerto Rico, Guam, Virgin Island, right, and American Samoa. And that's covered in my other video on this topic. Okay. By the way, same thing goes with estate taxes, corporate taxes, wagering and gambling taxes, and even gun manufacturing taxes. I cover that in my other videos. You know, they deliberately made you believe that it applies to you when it doesn't by using the term United States. You assume it's me. For nationality purposes, we're all state and U.S. citizens. I'm a Florida citizen and a U.S. citizen at the same time. Like a French and German, or French and German and a citizen of Europe, European Union. That's right. But it's still German and French first. I'm Floridian first and U.S. citizen second. Okay? So what you want to do, ladies and gentlemen, and ladies, is go educate yourself about all this stuff, okay? And go to our website, freedomlawschool.org, okay? And when you go there, what do? You go and listen to the videos as you drive on the road, okay? You go click on the 7 steps gold bar in the middle of the page. Start your 7 steps to regain your power and freedom. And when you get there, you go down, you see, we start with the law. I gave the law a little bit already. Follow the law. Okay? These videos cover the laws just like I did for you. These are 5 short videos, and the same 5 are the more complete, longer videos below them right here. Then you realize you've got to stop filing income tax forms. It's a confession form. You put the rope around your neck and give it to the IRS. Stop doing that. Why you should do that? It's covered in there. Why it is so dangerous for you to confess under oath that you owe the IRS money and give the power to the IRS to rape you every which way you can think of. Then you go to step 3. Realize that the IRS operates on deception and bluff. The Wizard of Oz is the major media blowing up the IRS to be this powerful entity. They are not. And you, the American people, Dorothy and her friends are just, they have to be afraid of the big IRS Wizard of Oz. Whoa! If I don't follow, they're going to come and get me, put me in prison. We've been brainwashed by the major media, okay, by charismatic preachers, by the accountant, tax practitioner communities, enroll agents, CPAs, tax lawyers. Pay your taxes here, pay early. All that stuff, okay? So you're going to get over this brainwashing by going through step 3. Step 4, take courage, from our victories. That's right. No student of Freedom Law School has ever gone to prison for taxes, nor had their paycheck or bank account levied or home or business seized by the IRS. That's right. I've done this now since 2001. That's right. Since about 24 years ago. It's a Godzilla of the IRS is a myth. We are toothless wizards. If you don't file, don't put the rope around your neck, okay? You can stop the withholding on your paycheck on our website for free. Yes, you can all do that, by the way. Go under right here, free yourself from tax withholding, is there. You go click on that, stop your employer from stealing income taxes from your paycheck. It's free. Now, you don't have to file a 1040 form to get some of that stolen money back from the IRS. So be sure to do that, okay? Lawfully and correctly. Okay, now, step 5 is also very important because you have a right to question authority. That's right. Write your Congress members, pay income tax only if your congressman can show you the laws that require you to file and pay income taxes. If they don't. You don't have to pay tribute to the IRS beast. It's really slavery. You want to be a slave or free? Stop being a slave. Our petitions have these questions addressed to your congressman. None of them have ever shown us wrong. These petitions are free on our website at freedomlawschool.org. Send them out. For our Restore Freedom Plan members, we'll do them for you, okay? Now, this is all free. The 6th step is optional. I invite you to join us. If you have a spirit of America's founding fathers in you, about freedom, about liberty, about what's right is right, okay? About America being great based upon freedom, okay? Like them, join hands together with other freedom seekers like yourself. And for you, the modern day founding fathers of America, the privilege of 100% guarantee and protection from IRS is available. And you can enjoy 100% guarantee when you legally stop filing and pay income taxes, as long as you're a member of the Restore Freedom Plan. Freedom Law School will protect you, protect from IRS leaving your money, or Freedom Law School will reimburse you, and you will not to go to prison either. Okay? Now, lastly, everybody, listen, we're going to take America back. Okay? We allowed our public servants to take over our home. We have to take our home back. Your home, my home, our country back. How do we do it? By telling others. Family members first. Parents, children, siblings. Your friends. Your co-workers. People in the community. Everybody you know. Okay, your customers, okay? And so you want to love and spread the truth to people you love, okay? And here you all become modern-day Paul Revere's. By empowering American people with the law and the truth, we're going to restore America, America's families. America will be a great free nation once again, and we'll have to pay you. Yes, I want to pay you for referring other people to Freedom Law School. Join. Tell others, be an example. That's how we're going to do it. Like the founding fathers did. It's doable. So with that, you're probably going to watch this presentation probably once, maybe twice more as you drive around town, at your job, or home at lunch or dinner, and make sure you understand it. Okay? And bottom line is, I give you the tools for you to be free. I love for you, every one of you, to be free. I would love for America to be a live and let live, a love and let love country once again. But I cannot do it for you. And I cannot make everybody do it. I cannot make anybody do it. I need your help to have America be a free country. You free yourself with education, empowerment, on our website, freedomlawschool.org. Tell others, and not only you'll be free, but together we can have America be a free, great country. Once again, we can make America great and free, like we're meant to be. Thanks for watching.